Well, good afternoon and welcome everybody. Hope you've enjoyed bits of the fair that you've experienced over the last couple of days already. If while Abeer and myself are having the conversation, if you wouldn't mind muting, which I see most of you have anyway, you're probably all used to Zoom by now. We intend to talk, have a conversation for around half an hour, 30 to 40 minutes, and then there'll be a chance for you to put some questions to Abeer if you have any. And also Merrin will keep an eye on the chat and try to reply to any comments you have. And we can use both the chat and the direct chat after about 40 minutes. So Abeer, we had a bit of a practice earlier in the week, so hopefully we do have in mind some things to talk about. So if we make a start, when I was having a look at your, I should just introduce Abeer Kayani. You can see her on your screen there. She's working from home like all of us at the moment, studio, so you can see beautiful scarves in the background. And I'm Deirdre Figueiredo. I'm the Director of Craft Space in Birmingham, and we're a craft development organisation. We're creative producers, and we also have a social engagement programme working with communities in different ways, connecting artists and their practices to communities. And we've been going for about 31 years. I'm meeting Abeer for the first time, and we've had a pre-conversation, as I've said. So excited to be chatting to you a bit more. But I noticed when I was researching Abeer on your website and really trying to understand who you were and your practice, I noticed that you talked about your childhood and that we share a background of being born and experiencing our childhoods in another country. And we've both come to the UK from there. Mine happens to be Tanzania in East Africa, and yours is Kashmir, which I noticed. And I wondered how your childhood experiences informed and shaped your sensibility and your journey into craft and textile, because I'm always interested, about when people sort of become aware of that as part of their creative journey. So tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, so yes, I grew up in Kashmir, and it's a village that we come from, and as villages all over the world are, there's a lot of sense of community. People come together to do things, and there's always things happening. And in Kashmir, initially, if you sort of drive in or if you come towards our village, you'll see that there's a lot of colourful houses. So that will be like some houses are teal, some are bright red, the roofs are painted, and everything is just very lovely. And I remember growing up, I used to see my grandmother. She used to be weaving like chair seats and baskets, and they used to make the things that they were then going to use in their homes. So it was just a whole sense of making for function, not craft in the sense of make to sell. So it was more of a way of life that they were using it as. And we have these mud built stoves where you put the firewood and you light it up, and above those, it's almost in every house. You have this beautiful sort of structure which the sort of fumes go up from, and on that everyone's painted like a vase or something with plants in it. And it's just sometimes the children who do it, it's sometimes the adults who do it, and they just do it out of the decorative element. They just enjoy having that inside as well. There's a lot of nature everywhere, there's a lot of communication, and yeah, it's just very lively and a burst of energy down there. So I grew up there, then moved to the city, and I remember every summer we used to go back for Eid, which is like our Christmas. And it used to be very exciting because everyone was coming together to this one house, and there would be so much colour, so much colourful food, so much clothing, and it was like everyone was getting ready for that sort of festive time. And yeah, it was just a burst of energy. So I think that's coming to the UK and having that transition from that really lively, impactful environment to this sort of quieter place, it sort of, yeah, it created a sense of absence of the belonging that was over there. So it's like saying there's a party next door and you're not invited. And yeah, so I just started looking at things that I had and just tangible ways to store memories and just reflect and remember things. And yeah, that's just how I got into creatively making something that reflected where I grew up. So yeah.
And just sort of staying with that theme of sort of growing up, and how I noticed you refer to Kashmir as your homeland, which is, you know, an interesting word and an interesting concept. And it struck me that, you know, we also share that sense of the home can be more than one place. And as global citizens, we have multiple identities which sort of intersect at different times and perhaps in different places as well. How do you think this sort of worldview and being part of a diaspora influences, you know, the way you think about things and process things?
Yeah, so it's interesting that you bring that up, because in my house, I was the child who had to come here whilst really cherishing all those things. And I've got my elder sister who actually stayed there for education, and she spent those 5-6 years there and then she came here, whereas I was here. So our take on sort of what we value and cherish is a little bit different. And it's because of that distance from a place that I sort of felt really truly belonging to and had a sort of emotional connection to. Because of my prime growing up years, I was there. It was very engaging and involving. So yeah, I think you value something more when it's not as much present. And yeah, it's all about perspective, really, because if I was spending my years over there, I might not have seen it as such an important factor to focus this energy on. So yeah, it's interesting. And I remember someone said once that we don't actually remember places or people, we remember the memory of those. So when we're recalling a good feeling or a memory, it's actually a memory of a memory because we're remembering how it made us feel. So that's very reflective and yeah, evident in my work, because every time I look at something, I think about the story. The colors are there and the patterns are there, but it just takes me directly back to the starting point, you can say.
Mm. And that's interesting, because it's interesting that that distance in a way has enabled you to explore those memories in a particular way, but also maybe in a heightened sort of way. And we were talking last time, when we were talking, we were sort of saying, you know, how much craft is very much part of the everyday in Kashmir, and you sort of, you grow up with it as absolutely part of your life, both in a decorative way, but also in a functional way, and so much connected to nature. So things are directly, it directly influences the making of the things around, that you have materials that are, you know, there, that you have the influence of the environment as you see it and as you experience it. And so that led us to a conversation about colour, because you have a remarkable heightened sort of sense of colour, and you're a real colourist, you can see in your work. And you know, we sort of tracked a pathway through from your childhood, noticing of colour, and perhaps it is that distance that made it so vibrant for you in your memory. So colour is really central to your work now, and when you were at college. And we were talking about your transition collection, and we had an exchange about the transition, observation of the seasons and of nature, which still, you know, influences you even more so now, and how observing the seasons, being out there observing the seasons. We started talking about colours we liked, and we talked about the colour green, and I was saying how I notice, you know, and how about greens that we like, and I was saying, well, I really love that fresh green of spring, which is very light and sort of very lively and very fresh and just beautiful on the eye, early spring, and then how it gets darker. And then towards August, I felt that it was a sort of quite dark, oppressive green. And then you were saying, well, then it transitions into this sort of autumnal richness again, and then it becomes a different sort of green and starts going into other colours. And you were very particular about, well, what sort of green is it, Deirdre? So it's a really amazing sense of colour that you have. And you mentioned a particular scarf called Forest Scarf as we were having that conversation, which I thought it was quite nice how you, to show us, show people who are listening how you experiment with colour and arrive at that process, and then arrive at the end product of that exploration. So I think you're going to share screen and tell us a bit about the Forest Scarf.
So this is just, I thought it would be a good starting point to start off. This is a picture taken in December in Kashmir from a car when we were sort of driving past. And yeah, it's just a burst of colour and sort of that lively nature of the environment that I wanted to start off with. But if we just move past, these are some of the objects that I've used for inspiration previously. And
so those are all from Kashmir, are they all?
Well, they're from all over the place, really, but the bond that I have with them is memories with them. So that button was made by a tailor. My sister bought some fabric, and then, yeah, it just traveled with me somehow to the UK. And then those bangles are there as well. And it's just things that are less used because I'm in the UK, but they've also got stories with them. So yeah, it's a way that I sort of work through things and attach stories to them and memories to them. So I'm just going to skip past. So yes, for the Forest Scarf, the transition collection initially started off with me focusing on microscopic details and colours and a lot of the transition of one form to the other in those objects. However, as it's grown, and it's been a few years since I've been back home, I started looking at it from a bit of a sort of a faraway perspective, and I started thinking about seasons and shifts and things like that. And we were going through sort of the season from summer, and it was transitioning, and we were going into autumn, and it was going to change everything. So that really influenced me, and I wanted to create something that looked and focused in on the transition of one season to the other. So I started off by looking at the nature and looking at the colours, and I categorised it in a way that I was looking at the decaying colours, so the really rich ground colours and the rusty colours that we see, the leaves changing before they're sort of decomposing and gone, and then the rich citrusy colours and the evergreen, which is what comes through when spring emerges. And then I layered them together to put that pattern onto that, and then the new colours came through. So it was almost metaphoric to say that with the shift of season, there is rebirth, regrowth, and nature is teaching us resilience as human beings, and it does so 4 times a year when one season shifts into the other, and there's regrowth, and yeah, things are changing, evolving constantly. And yeah, I was just looking technically, I was looking at the different colours, how they went together, what colours overlapped well, and yeah, just exploring the transition of the greens into the rusts and things like that. I ended up selecting this one and this one because I thought it would be nice to have the decaying colours categorised in one group, and then the rebirth and the evergreens in the other. And then if I just put that there. And then, yes, so this is a scarf that was the outcome. I wanted it to be an overall print full of the whole greens layered on top of the browns, because our life in a way is a metaphor for that constant downfall, and then getting back up and, you know, being resilient. And then there you can see the sort of decaying colours paired up with the rebirth and the regrowth, and that's a bit more detailed to show how that's translated into the silk itself. And yeah, that's just a more detailed view. So I work with a printing company here in the UK, and they use these really nice silks, and they used inks which are actually acid dye inks. And what that does is it gives the fabric a really good richness, because the ink is printed onto the fabric and then it's steamed, and that allows it to bond with the fabric and be really vibrant. And I think as a traditional screen printer who has been using dyes and who knows the authentic quality of the material, that, you know, that they allow the fabric to absorb and reflect that quality, I wanted my fabrics to really be different from my screen printed work, but show that authenticity. So yeah, this is the product of that, and yeah, it's just a jumble of colors, a mixture, and yeah, this is available in 2 sizes. I've got a square and a long one. It just, yeah, personal preference, how you like to wear it. And I've done it in a smaller product as well, if someone sort of wants to keep it tied around their neck as a little sort of a memory. Yeah, that's the story behind the forest silk.
Great. And I love that metaphor that, you know, you make it sound sort of so simple, but actually that something, you know, that a product, that something that's a product of your handmaking can be also, can sort of retain and have that message to us about, you know, human resilience, in terms of a simple thing like the seasons changing and the sense of, you know, shedding and then rebirth, which you can apply to so much that's going on at the moment, and that hopefully we, you know, in the same way as we will transition, we hope, into, you know, a different and better future at the end of this COVID thing, or you know, as we transition through it and learn to live with it in another way. But that people will have a chance to sort of re-emerge and rebuild and, you know, test their resilience. Well, it is being tested rather a lot at the moment. But you also, it sort of alludes to the sense that you've talked about, that sort of observation, creating that story in your work, as you've just shown us, whilst implementing, is also about attaching that emotional value, creating rather that emotional value in a piece of work, even, you know, something like a scarf that you'll wear close to you, or that you'll choose to wear. And you were quite particular about, you know, creating that emotional value for the customer and for the audience. And that's something you're thinking about in the way that you structure your business, you know, going forward, isn't it? About your connection with a commissioner, for example. So at the moment you've got scarves that you've created, and they're your thought process, they're your observations, but you're thinking about another way that you can work.
Absolutely. So at the moment, the transition collection is sort of my transition from one phase to the other. But I would really enjoy working on a project where someone else has maybe an heirloom object, or something that they really value or cherish. There's all kinds of people who collect things out there, and they just keep these things. And I think it'd be really lovely to have it translated. It could be the patterns, it could be the textures, it could be the colors even, and yeah, just have a silk that has those colors and that pattern, and you can use it to wear it, you can have it as a wall hanging. I had a customer who was looking at one of my scarves, and it had this rush of blue, and she was just looking at it, and I said to her, do you want to try it on? And she goes, no, if I bought this, I would hang it on a wall to stare at it every day. If I wear it, I can't see it. And that was the moment where I thought, this is the sort of thought process that someone who really values and cherishes the message behind the product is what every maker really needs and wants. So yeah, anything, if anyone's interested in having something translated into a piece, I would be happy to do a bespoke commission. It would also allow me to step out of my own headspace and focus on something else, which is really lovely, because giving back is what we really like to do as well.
And I think that the fact that you do care about sort of, you know, part of your values around being a maker is that you're thinking about emotional attachment to the object. It's not just a commercial thing. It's you know, it's something you've worked through a process to develop, and it means something to you in the way that you've developed the process, as we've heard about, you know, what it means in terms of your childhood and, you know, all of those connections. And that makes craft, it's very important that you feel that, I think, because, and that you feel in a way socially responsible in that way for your product, because it links to, you know, sustainability and a reason why, you know, not to go to IKEA for something, or not to sort of just mindlessly and carelessly buy something from, you know, Amazon or eBay, because you have invested your time in it and it has that emotional attachment, and that makes it worth having and keeping for a long time, which is part of a sustainable, you know, part of making a sustainable future for us all, if we hold on to it and care about it because it has that story. And even if, you know, we're hanging it on the wall and looking at it, it's giving us pleasure and a feeling of emotion that is also, you know, quite rich, and at the same time has that value for us, and that's a reason to own it, and it's not just a throwaway thing. So when we talked a little bit about your view on sustainability and environmental issues and what your stance is, that emotional value conversation came up, didn't it?
Absolutely. And I think, yeah, absolutely. And I think it's very easy to get into the rhythm of manufacturing lots of things and putting them out there, but then that's really what fast fashion has become, where you can make loads of things which are meaningless, and you can have them outsourced from companies, you know, all over the world, and you'll get them really cheap, but they won't have any value associated with them. As soon as they're damaged or worn out, because they won't be the quality things that you would buy from a maker, you're going to throw them away. And I think that's one of the things that I really didn't like. I did an internship with a company, a print design company, and they had this huge stack of books from all these different cultures and eras, and they would just flip open a page and say to us, okay, make something like this but a little bit different. And I did that for a few weeks, and I just thought, no, this is not how I want to make things. This is not me as a maker. I want someone to hold my work and say, yes, I know this is good quality, I know where it comes from, it's going to last me forever, and I want to keep it as a piece that will survive, you know, for a long time. So I think it's really important to acknowledge your values, because we all have a little sense, that sort of a voice in our head which says, oh, but you should do this, and we sometimes don't listen to it because there's so much louder voices around us. But I think also to new makers, new students as well, really think about what it is you want, where you want your product to go, and think rationally about what sort of market it has as well, because it will all sort of come together, and, you know, you'll be able to recognize your values, and people will be able to see them, and they'll be able to be reflected in your work, which I think is really important to be an authentic maker.
Yeah, okay. And then coming back to your inspiration, that's always been there, but you know, continues from when you're a student, but continues into the way you work now. I was interested in your mention of sort of architectural geometry. So we can see that in Forest Scarf, of course, but architectural geometry, and also the play of light and shadow, which continues to interest you. And you had a particular set of work, a range called Distressed, which I think was from your student days, but it was to do with beetle wings and observing nature again, and observing beetle wings. I think an object at the V&A that was in the Indian collection. But I liked it as an example of sort of playful experimentation, and I thought people might be interested to see a little bit more about, you know, your image and your playfulness and your process, and how you made, without giving away any secrets, how you made your own recipe to, you know, arrive at a kind of a creative outcome that was quite interesting and has led you to, you know, explore the directions that you've explored. And of course, beetle wings played a big part in the Mughal era jewelry making, and inspired a lot of artwork and embroidery from that region of northern India.
Absolutely. So yeah, I went to the V&A to look at different archives and to pick up something that sort of spoke to me. And it was an experimental project just to sort of discover what we liked doing as textile designers, and yeah, just to really get into the processes and experiment and explore things. So I came across this archive at the V&A, and it was a really sheer fabric, and it had this beetle wing embroidery and with sort of metallic thread. It originates from India, and it's dated back to 1858. I've got the reference there if anyone wants to have a look at it. And it was really interesting to see the colors transitioning, and also the delicacy of the fabric, because someone would have sat down and hand embroidered this, and then it would have traveled from India to, you know, the UK, because it was getting very popular among the women. And it just fascinated me. However, it was behind a piece of glass, and I wasn't able to access it and get a closer look at the fabric. So I went back to university. We're very fortunate we have our own archives at UCA, and I went through the archives and I found this piece there. It's also a piece of beetle wing with beetle wing embroidery. There wasn't any documentation of where it's from or how it is, but because the characteristics and the netting and everything was so similar, I assumed that it was from same sort of time period and same place as well. And then I started doing a bit of research, because I'm not very scientific with how I work, but I like to look into the science of things and try to incorporate that into my processes. So I started looking at other objects that are iridescent and that shift with colors, and I booked out a camera and took some pictures of these peacock feathers that my friend brought in. Her parents are like collectors, and they love having different ones. So I started looking and researching into it, and what I found is light and the nanoscopic structures and how the light hits the surface, that's what makes it iridescent and causes that shift from one color to the other. So the aim was to translate that into my own work. So I did a series of drawings. I have a fine art background, so I really like to get my inks and my pens out and do a bit of hand drawing. And what I did is I found a piece of fabric that I distressed, and then I had it sculpted in a 3D way, and I left it on one of the print tables in our studio. And as the light was hitting it from different directions, I would go every sort of 10-15 minutes and I would draw. And the outcome was this really nice distressed composition that was breaking and frayed on the edges. And I thought that portrayed really nicely the impact of light and also the fragility of the original archive that I was interested in. So taking that forward, so a lot of dyeing, printing, and a lot of that process later, I ended up with these pieces, and these are actually quite small and they're very intricately detailed. And I created a recipe where I was able to print with color, strip a layer of the fabric, and do some sort of selective print mark making on the fabric all at once. And it just had these qualities. When the light was hitting it from different directions, it would change. When it was layered with a different color, it would then shift. And I felt like it really encapsulated the qualities of that original archive, which was constantly changing and had that different color layering techniques to it. So yeah, I was very happy with this piece. I printed with a Devore chemical, which strips out one layer of the fabric, and it left this really nice, fragile looking layer. And I carried on doing this in my final year of university. I have a whole body of work which explores this, and I plan to do more of it once I've got my studio set up. But at the moment, I'm focusing more on the digital aspect of things whilst I have that running. So that's it from this project.
Great, thank you. That's interesting. And then you just mentioned the sort of current times at the moment that we're working in. Obviously, you graduated fairly recently. Was it last year or the year before?
It was last year. So I graduated in 2019, and I think, yeah, it was now it seems like a good time to graduate because of everything is changing so quickly. But yeah, I exhibited at Farnham, so the university exhibition, then I did New Designers, and yeah, it just really made my belief stronger in me as an independent maker rather than working for a company or going into anything that's fast fashion. I also was invited to do an artist residency in at the Watts Gallery, so I had a whole room to myself. I was able to do a bit of experimental color work and just talk people through my processes. I had my initial inspiration there and the whole journey of the fabrics, and I did met some great people, did a lot of networking there. It was really, really good for a maker to have that opportunity and that space to be able to show work.
And I know you had plans, to develop your screen printing processes and continue with that. And obviously you've had to, with COVID and lockdown, you've had to adapt and retreat into your bedroom, and in one sense, or into a room in the house, not your bedroom, but into home. So what have you been able to produce in lockdown? And in terms of process, so you're focusing on digital because that's what you can do at the moment, and you've had to sort of adapt a bit, but it shows your adaptability really that you've been able to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's important to take everything as an advantage and really use it, because with digital, there's lots we can do. We can do lots of clever layering techniques and things, and you can control the color to an extent, which with screen printing would be a surprise every time. So I've come to a point where I'm really testing the digital process. So I layer lots of prints and I make them do these odd color changes that physically wouldn't be possible to replicate with traditional textiles printing. At the start, it felt like I was cheating on my traditional practice whilst doing the digital work. But then I realized that it's a different body of work, and it's going to feature different designs, and it's going to have colorfulness, but it's going to be a different body of work. And I've got a whole range of work that I'm keeping exclusive for my screen printed work, because it just has its own feel. And yeah, I've collected most of the stuff for the studio. I've got these huge screens, and yeah, I've bought most of the chemicals. I'm just waiting to see what's happening with COVID, or how long I can wait. And then I think it will just be a matter of making that decision and seeing if we have physical shows in the future, because I think it's important to be able to feel fabric, to be able to see it, to be able to get the depth and the dimension when you're there in person. So yeah, it's just a lot of thinking to do at the moment. But yeah, I've been working with the Princess Trust. I've got a great mentor. She's been guiding me through things. She's got lots of experience coaching people. So it's all really helpful in that way. But I do plan to return to screen printing, and I've got a squeegee on my desk, and I always just look at it and I think I will get back to this. It just maybe isn't the right time right now.
And the end of the squeegee's got particularly good colour, hasn't it?
It has. Let me just, there we go.
A colour that you want to, yeah, you like that colour.
It's just, yeah, it's lovely. And it's every time we print with it, it's got some sort of dye or something on it. So this piece after 50 years will be my trusty, piece of work. People have their really old traditional tools, and I'm excited for this one to become worn and torn like that.
Yeah. And I was interested in your sort of future plans to apply what you do to furnishing products and the prototypes you've been working on. So you could show us. I see you've got something ready there, but I thought people might be interested to see how going from you know, scarf into something three-dimensional.
So yeah, let me just show you. So I do a lot of screen printing on linen, or I did do when I was at university, and the colours are really vibrant and strong, and this is one of the colourways that is inspired by one of my rings, and it's just a linen wrapped around the lamp top, and the wood is, it's a hand carved lamp, and it's really nice, a local maker in New Forest, and yeah, this is the sort of body of work that I wanted to bring forward. This piece is obviously degraded and broken. It's again looking at the same narrative of belonging, brokenness, absence, presence, and then I also have this one here. So it's again sort of architectural pattern. This pattern here is inspired, oh, I'm not out of camera. This pattern here is inspired by fabric textures. So this one is actual textures of fabric, and this is the structures of woven fabric. So it's just combining those elements to create those pieces, which really reflect the essence of what I've been sort of researching and working on for textiles.
So is that a ceramic piece you just showed us? I didn't realise.
No, it's linen wrapped around.
Oh, it's linen. Okay.
Wrapped around.
You're thinking, because it has a sort of plant in it, were you thinking planters, or were you thinking lampshades as well? But all different variety of products.
Absolutely, and there's lots out there. There's this fabric that you can have a layer of something done on it and it becomes oilcloth, so inside it, it's that water resistant layer, and I thought it'd be really nice to have something colourful with plants, maybe smaller things like stationery, and yeah, it's just mostly home furnishings. I'm interested in looking at lampshades, maybe a piece of wall hanging, cushions would be really lovely, and yeah, I've got a whole range of work which hopefully will explore that in the future. Of course, it will all be bold colours, and yeah, it will just evolve as time goes, really.
Yeah, well, it's great to have those plans in your mind, and you know, hope you find some really good collaborators to produce those things with. It'll be really exciting. The other exciting thing you mentioned you've got coming up, and it's really pleasing, you know, that a young maker like yourself does have opportunities on the horizon, and in plans that, you know, plans that you're making to get through these difficult times. But you could just mention to people listening about your new project coming up next year.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've, when I graduated, I was looking at the local art galleries and things. I didn't know what would be here because I'm based in Southampton, and it felt like it was a quiet place. And yeah, I was approached by Solent University. So they have a gallery of their own called Solent Showcase Gallery, and they were planning to do a project on Islamic art and Islamic architecture and things, and they were interested in having a local artist. So they approached me and asked me would I be interested in doing that, and then we just got to talking, and it's a project that was supposed to launch this year in August. However, it's been delayed, so it seems like it will be sometime happening in May 2021, and I'll be doing an installation piece, and I'll be exploring those techniques which I did as a screen printer in university. So it's going to be looking at Islamic art, the patterns, and it will be an installation that works with light, and it will be a screen printed fabric, so there'll be lots of sort of movement, and it seems like it will be a really exciting piece right now, and I'll be sharing more of that on my Instagram and my website as time goes and as it progresses. But yeah, it's really great that local galleries are willing to trust new artists and walk them through this process. I've been assigned a mentor, and she sort of, I assist her in workshops that they do, workshops happening before COVID, and it's really lovely that they're training me to fit into the role that I initially told them that I wanted to be. So I like doing workshops with different groups and things, so it's just, yeah, all evolving, and it's a lovely welcoming space from the local galleries and things here in Southampton.
That's great, and it's great that it's, you know, somewhere local, that you're making a connection to a cultural venue near to you, and that they are valuing that they have in their community, and connecting them to audiences and, you know, visitors in that place. So there's that, you know, you're making that connection to place, and you're belonging in Southampton, which is, you know, really nice. It's a positive thing, and you know, you'll have a really lovely exchange, I'm sure, and can't wait to see what the work is that you produce there. So it'd be great to see it coming up on your Instagram.
Yeah,
and we're coming to the end now, so I just wanted to finish by reminding people what products you're selling here at the fair today, just as we approach the end of the fair, the 2 days of the fair. But just remind us what's on sale and where we can find your products.
I've initially started off with just one size silk scarves, but now expanded the range. So all of the patterns from the transition collection, 4 of the designs have been translated into these skinny scarves, and just wearing one myself. They're really soft and lovely, and you won't know it until you've held them yourself. So they can be worn in your hair, they can be tied around your wrist, around a handbag, very versatile pieces. That's those ones. They're all online on my Etsy shop or my website, or if you just head to my Instagram, the links are all there. These are some of the scarves that I designed initially, and they're there as well. This is called Jewel, and
that's beautiful.
Thank you. And then this one is Aquatic. It seems to get a lot of attention, and it's one of my favorites. And this one is on the website as well. And this is the more warm tones. This is one of the ones that I felt I was really testing the digital techniques, because all of these layering and colors, couldn't do that with screen printing. Just going to Rose. This is one of the first few scarves that I sold, so I was very happy. It sold through a gallery in Farnham, so that was really lovely. And then this is the brand new range that I've launched for the craft festival. So they're silk scarves with a cotton backing. They have a really lovely fall to them. So they've got a bit of a sturdiness, which I think is really nice for our seasons now that are sort of changing. Yeah, if you go onto my website, you'll be able to see there's lots of ways to tie them, wear them, and lots of pictures. And then I've got a few bundles as well. So if you want to get more than one and just save a bit of money, you can always, go head on there and just get a pack and then split them up, wear them yourself, maybe give them to people, things like that. So yeah, that's
it's beautifully presented, Abeer, beautifully packaged and presented. So
thank you. Yeah, I am trying. It's just the lack of sunlight recently hasn't been helping. And I used to photograph my work in a studio here in Southampton where I used to go to college, but because of COVID, they've sort of shut down. So yeah, I'm just trying to do the best I can at home. Got lots of MDF, painted it. So it's a learning curve as a maker, but yeah, lots to learn and lots to go forth from here. And
remind us what your Instagram handle is.
Yeah, my Instagram handle is designed by Abeer. So that's spelt designed by, and then ABEER. And that's the same for my Etsy, and my website is www.abeerkayani.com. Yeah.
Great. Lovely. Well, it's been great chatting to you, and also discovering our, mutual cultural heritage sort of roots to both of our creative worlds that we're in. We can open up to questions now if anybody has any questions. I noticed Stephen has been commenting quite a lot. You can unmute yourselves and ask Abeer any questions that strike you. Anybody? Or put something in the chat, and Merrin will spot it and let me know. Stephen had commented on the durability and alternative use, the sort of consumer behavior really about, the sustainability of making and practice. So Tia Palmer is asking, what was your experience at New Designers like?
Yeah, so New Designers was, I like to call it interesting, because it was a mixture of very busy and exciting, but also very overwhelming. Everybody was suddenly in a space, and everybody had worked really hard on their pieces, and we were all hoping to get noticed, to have good conversations. I think overall, what came up from New Designers is I made some good connections with people that I had reached out to previously and said to them, I'm exhibiting and I'm going to be there, please do come and have a look at my work. I met a few ladies who were really interested in my pieces, so I was just passing on lots of business cards, taking down their details, and yeah, I remember I had a really long conversation, it must have been about half an hour, with one of the women about my Devore work, and she just held it throughout the whole time, and I think that was one of the points where I thought, okay, I want to keep making, I want to, you know, keep giving people like this who really cherish craft and hand printed work more products to look at, feel, and yeah, just own really nice things. So New Designers was interesting. I know this year they've done a digital sort of thing and it's been different, and the year group now going on are thinking whether they should do it or not. So I think overall New Designers was very overwhelming, but I didn't realize what I had gained until a month after, because it takes a lot of time to come back and think and reflect on all of those things that you've heard and seen. So yeah, I think it was overall a good experience, and yeah, I definitely gained a lot from going there. Yeah,
that's good to hear. Jan, did you want to say your question? Or
yes, please. Yes, do you do a limited edition of your scarves, with it being expensive to run a batch? What's the maximum number that they can do for you?
So do you mean sort of how, from a manufacturing point of view, or just from me having it made? Both of those. Yeah. So yeah, digital printing is very expensive from a financial point of view. So I think it's important, especially if you've got a large collection, it's important to realistically think what can be made. I haven't put a limit on the amount, the edition of the scarves that I'll be doing. However, I am producing my work in small batches at the moment, and the company I print with, they don't have a minimum. As long as it's a meter plus, they're happy to take those orders. They do have a long turnaround time. They've told me for Christmas it can be up to 5 weeks for work to come back. So we've had to sort of think ahead, but also consider COVID and things like that. And yeah, it's there are things and logistics to consider, but at the moment I haven't thought about what the limited edition would be. What would you sort of suggest, or what would be your take on that, Janice?
Well, because I'm a photographer and I like to work with Photoshop, I was asking you really quite from a selfish point of view, because I've always wanted to have some scarves made from my own work, but I've never found anywhere that I felt that I could afford to put a large sum of money into it and know that I was going to be able to use a limited number if that was a large number.
Yeah, no, I do understand, and that is something to consider, especially as when you're making a new collection. It's always a risk of whether what you make will sell or whether it's going to go somewhere or not. So I think, yeah, if you think that there is something that you'd like to make, I would encourage going for it. But yeah, have a look to see what sort of different printing areas there are, what companies print, and see what suits yourself, because everyone has a different turnaround time, everyone has a different sort of samples. I would start by ordering samples to see what the quality of their work is as well. So I like my silks because they're soft and they have this sort of fall, but that might not work for another maker who might maybe want something that's got a bit of a different texture, or you know, just printed from a different ink. But yeah, if you want to ask anything more specific or go into more detail, I'm happy for you to drop me an email or just message me on Instagram and we can discuss that.
Thank you very much.
Okay, there's 3 more questions. Well, first one is a very just simple practical one. When you say a cotton backing to the scarf, is it 2 layers? Is that Jan Carroll?
Yes.
Yep, so the cotton backing is just 1 layer. It's a sturdy cotton. It's not harsh against the skin, but it has a nice weight to it. And as a maker, I wanted to get something that's good quality, but it wasn't sort of rough like maybe calico, or yeah, it has a nice soft feel to it, but it's just got one layer. I've also been looking at masks and things, and people like to merge lots of different layers, and I just thought for scarves and things like that as well, it's important that the material has still got its flow with the silk. So it's just one layer of cotton, and it's a nice sturdy cotton. So yeah.
So it's not silk then in that range?
It is silk, so it's got a silk front. Let me just grab one of them for you. So it's got a printed silk front,
yes,
and then the back is cotton. And what that does is it gives it a nice sturdy weight to it, which my scarves didn't have before, I noticed, because the silk was so organically draping to its own form. Does that answer that for you?
So if you feel it with your finger and thumb, do you feel as though it's two pieces, or do you feel as it is one piece melded together?
I think you can tell that there is something else in there, because I work a lot with silks. I can tell when there's something in there, but the sensation to the fingers, you feel the gentleness. So the cotton isn't harsh, it's gentle, but it's got a sturdy feel to it.
Are they bonded together, or are they loose? Sort of.
They're loose. Yeah, I wanted it to still stay a bit fluid.
So they are loose. Okay.
I wanted it to have its natural fall. So they're just sewn around the edges and flipped over. There's also no tags on any of my new products. I printed my names on them. It's just because I don't like wearing clothes with tags, so I thought that would be something I would take out of my new products.
That's a really good idea, actually, because tags can be, especially on a scarf, can be a bit in the way, a bit annoying, can't they? So Tia is asking, I don't know if Tia wants to ask her own question, but did you always want to do art and textiles?
Oh, did I? Well, I was always interested in interior spaces, and someone pointed out to me that my work was very colourful. It was a tutor at my university, and because we were taking a project forward and I didn't know what element to take, and she looked at my work, and it was a popping moment where I realised I am interested in interior spaces and the impact of colour in those spaces, because I also like to wear colour, and I like to surround myself with a lot of sort of bold things that sit in an environment nicely. So I've always had an interest in interior spaces, the impact of colour on people, and it's just sort of translated nicely into the scarves. So I've always been drawing, always been sketching. My family encouraged me to keep going. I come from a family of doctors and engineers, so it's been an interesting change for them, having a child who collects everything she can find. And yeah, I was always interested, and I knew this was this or psychology, and I think it was an obvious decision. It was art. So yeah.
I'm glad. Thank you. I relate as well. Background.
Managed to resist the what can be the push to go into the same profession, you know, the doctors and the engineers, and you managed to go into the arts and culture instead, which is with the support of your family. So that really good message.
Yeah, and the thing is, I come from a family of creative people. Everyone is very much creative, but they've never pursued it as a career. And I constantly say this to my family and even friends in the local area, that if I'm doing this now, then someone will have someone to look at. So a child can say to their parents, well, she's done it, why can't we? And then it's almost being a role model for anyone in the future who may want to do it if they've got the interest. Because I was very lost. I had to do a lot of my own research. I had come to the UK. It was a new country. I wanted to do something different. And yeah, it's just, I would like to give back if anyone would want that. So yeah, it's a bit of an experiment I think I'm the experiment child in the family, but yeah, I enjoy that. It gives me a unique standing point as well. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're delighted to have you in the sector being that role model, and that you're conscious of it, because, you know, there's so sadly decreasing amount of craft and design being done in school, and in the curriculum. It seems to be, you know, lessening rather than increasing. So, you know, it is challenging for a child to think, you know, that they want to take up creativity as a career, because you know, unless you see the role models, because they don't really get a chance to really get into it at school. And it does take a lot of effort, I think, these days to do that, especially if your family, you know, perhaps don't have that in their background, or would prefer you to have a different sort of career. So I think it's wonderful that you're willing to put yourself forward as a role model, and speak about it, and be confident, and show that you're doing well, and living the life that you want to live, you know, quite happily. That's really important. So that's great. A couple of other things. Hannah Johnson, how challenging is it to bring out your work in a competitive fashion / textiles industry?
I don't really see it as a competition, just because my work isn't created to sell like the fashion market is. If I do ever want to see someone's work and see what they're doing, I like to see how they're presenting their work. I like to see what sort of spaces they're photographing it in. I like to see how they're talking about their work, because that shows how they're expressing their authenticity to the collection they're bringing forward. So, I mean, there's always the fact that fast fashion is always going to have things coming forward, and there's going to be lots of them, and at some point makers do feel maybe a bit insecure that, you know, this is happening. But I always think that it's my pace, and I feel strongly that the right client, the right marketplace, I will find my way there. And yeah, high street brands and those sort of things don't really affect me. I hardly go into those shops anymore. You can see one print on 10 different products. That's not me. Yeah, it's just not really a thought that crosses my mind. I've started looking more at different weavers, different jewelers, different printers, and I like to see what they're doing, because it's a source of inspiration really, rather than a competitive environment. Yeah.
And linked to that, there's a question about, I mean, you're incredibly articulate about your work, and you're thoughtful about being able to sort of talk about it and say what your influences are in a really lovely way. How important is social media marketing to your work?
I think, well, I wouldn't be able to say. I'm still learning a lot of things, but what I have done is I've done a lot of research, and I've even for this show, there's been a lot of coaching, there's been a lot of advice on do this, do that, and I think it's a learning process about social media. So I've got an Etsy shop set up, and I post weekly, every day almost, and I go there at the end of the week, and I see what the reach is on the work and what was seen more, and then I go back and look at what I posted then, what stories were there, what posts were there, and I try to see what is engaging the people, and then that doesn't necessarily change how I'm showing my work, but it encourages me to show more of that work. So yeah, I think I'm just learning how to do it. With social media, it can be really overwhelming, because some people have really high quality images, and you know, they've worked their way there. But as a new business, I always stop myself and I say, this person has been working here 6 years, and you're like 6 months barely, so you don't need to sit down and compare. In 6 years, you will be somewhere similar. So it's always just taking a step back and, you know, evaluating it in a more positive, rational way, and just putting forth what you have, because if you don't put forward what you have, people won't ask you questions, they won't know that you're there. And places like craft festivals and things, events, they present you to a wider audience, which then learns and engages. So that's always really helpful.
Okay, just one last question then, as we're coming to the end of the hour. Have you considered any other garments beyond scarves?
So I have been encouraged to do blouses, but I don't have a fashion background, and I'm not 100% confident with that. However, I've kept an open mind, and I'm thinking maybe a collaborative project with a limited edition of tops or blouses or something like that would be really nice. And I generally tend to wear clothes that are sort of loose and flowy, and it's just my style. So maybe something along those lines when I'm screen printing things, and then I can make a really small batch, show it to the audience, see what people say, and then make bigger work. So yeah, it is something that could be a work in progress, but once I've got the studio set up, I will have the facility to be able to make smaller pieces without the commitment of having really big batch orders or a lot of money being spent on that particular product. So yeah, that is something that I've sort of kept an open mind to. But yeah, it will progress as I get my space sorted and yeah, get set up.
Great. Okay, well, I think we've reached the end of our allocation. So Abeer, thank you so much for sharing with us your creative process, being so open about, talking to us about your childhood influences and everything that's inspired you in the past and continues to inspire you. All the best with everything. We look forward to your future projects and to what you get up to. But it's been delightful talking to you, and good luck with the hour remaining also of the fair. We hope you do well and get further exposure.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you everyone for giving some time this afternoon to hear our conversation, and enjoy the rest of the fair.